Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
This webinar will begin shortly. Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. We have Simon Berner with us. He is presenting on testing in the pipe and experience report in automation. We are delighted to have Simon with us today as he was a presenter at EuroSTAR and had a great attendance. So thank you very much to Simon for coming today. We still have two other webinars that are on our list for upcoming webinars. You can join those webinars over on our Huddle site right now. We have two ebooks out, Selenium Framework Design and Data-Driven Testing and Test Techniques for the Test Analyst. Those two ebooks can be downloaded over on our Huddle site. If you would like to ask Simon a question at any stage of the webinar, you can do so in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, and I will allocate 10 to 15 minutes at the very end of Simon's presentation to ask him those questions. So I will hand over to Simon. Thank you, Simon.
Perfect. Can you hear me?
Perfect, can hear you, yeah.
Can everyone see my screen, hopefully.
Yes,
Wonderful.
perfect.
So, hello, everyone. So this is a special day today, a wonderful day, because this is my first webinar, actually, and it is that kind of special because I can't see my audience. I can't see what you are actually talking to each other, or actually can't hear any noises. So this is kind of very special. And yeah, I don't feel the audience in that sense, that I don't know if you're happy right now, if you're angry, or if you even leave this webinar. So please, and that's where I relate to feedback. Feedback is tremendously important for me, especially to improve in the future, also for upcoming talks. And so yeah, feel free to give me feedback at any time after the webinar. So I will, on my final slide, you will see where you can contact me, best way on Twitter, or in a more private way on email, and so on. So, perfect, wonderful. So my name is Simon, as you already know. I'm a test engineer, consultant, currently working for House of Test Switzerland. And yeah, I have seen quite a couple of things, environments, teams in my past. And so just as a heads up, this is a very personal experience report. So everything, or a lot of things which I tell you today might not be applicable to your context, because I don't know your context. So yeah, but just feel free to give me any feedback or any hints if you have other experiences or whatever. So today, in the next couple of minutes, I would like to take you on the infinite racetrack of DevOps and give you some insights into a past project where I've been part of a cross-functional UX team, so a team which actually developed the web front end of an enterprise system, and that in a DevOps ecosystem. And one of our main goals, of course, besides feature development, was to balance testing and automation in a way that every single person in our team, so we were roughly about like 8 to 10 people, that everyone in our team was able to some kind, or to contribute as much as possible to testing. So as you can see in the middle, continuous testing is the magic buzzword these days, because, and that's my perception, or that's my personal point of view, because there is no separate test phase on this racetrack here. So we care about the quality continuously, so about testing hand in hand with every other section here, like operate, deploy, code, and so on. So with every other section on this infinite racetrack here, we care about that all the time, every single day. So a good metaphor for that is, you can imagine you have a relationship, for example. So you have a relationship with your partner, your wife, your husband, or someone else, or even you're married, and you care about your relationship every single day. You don't just say, or you shouldn't just say like, oh, I have a time slot on Friday or on Saturday from 8 to 10, and well, yeah, wherever, and we can then take care of our relationship. No, that's not the way it works. So we continuously care about, and that's the same with testing. So now speed, and that's why I have Lightning McQueen on my introduction slide there, is one of these essential ingredients in DevOps, because it's all about having a fast feedback loop on the things we do, so that we can rapidly adapt our behavior daily and get more fluent in our daily work, what we are actually doing. So being in DevOps, or yeah, being in the DevOps ecosystem embedded with your team is like sitting in a race car, you know, to win every to win, everyone has to needs to collaborate and work to go together, so that we can finally deliver real value to our customers as soon as it is needed. So with my talk today, I would like to give you 3 key insights or ideas on your way out here of this webinar back to your normal daily work. And the first one is why we don't have to reinvent the wheel again to come up with an own model for a test strategy. So basically what we do in projects, we don't take just the test strategy out of the box. We normally adapt to the context itself. So I will give you hints on that one. Then the second one, how testing can look like in an environment when you have to deal with pipelines in your project or in your team or whatever, how this can look like. So this is not like how it should look like, it's more like an option, or how you could do that. And the third one is, automation these days is how automation in testing can be shifted to the left side a bit and a bit to the right side. So to the left and to the right, this shifting things, I will come to that in a minute. But first, something completely different here. So a couple of you might have seen this movie here. It's The Mummy with Russell Crowe and Tom Cruise. It's a pretty cool movie. It's not an epic one, but it has some pretty cool scenes in it. And for me, there is right at the beginning, there is one sentence which actually stands out for me, spoken by Russell Crowe as Dr. Jekyll, and it's this one here. The past cannot remain buried forever. And now you might probably ask, but why exactly this one? So this sentence here is a great metaphor, and actually reminded me myself that also in software development, existing ideas, methodologies, and approaches, and so on, cannot be buried forever, and will sooner or later be found, excavated, and unleashed again, so that they can inspire us for doing new things in today's agile world. It's not like the technology, the tools and technologies, which we all know, they at some certain time of point they will be buried forever, and they will be just vanished and gone. Huh? Let me give you a few examples of these ancient models or of these ancient methodologies. So extreme programming, we all know that. So extreme programming practices have been around for ages, and even go back into the 60s, where the test first development practices were around, and they heavily, and that's astonishing, that heavily influence us today in the agile world. When we all look at this peer reviews, TDD, and so on, and all this mob testing or mob programming, all these the origin comes all from these extreme programming practices here. Then also we have these topics about shifting left and shifting right. So this is also nothing new. So shift testing left means actually bring testing back to development. But also this is nothing completely new in that sense, where I just remember when I started in IT, it's not that long ago, but it's still like 12 years ago when I started a small company. Of course, as a small company, we couldn't afford to have teams which were living in silos. So we hadn't these teams like requirements engineering, then development, and then at the end testing. So there was kind of a natural flow because of people and of course of budgets, and so that everyone had to do a little bit of everything. So we were kind of focusing right from the beginning on testing, and everyone was at least a bit involved on that. Also, the topic about shift testing right, which actually means bringing testing as close to the customer itself, is nothing brand new. As I said, also here an example. So in a small company where I worked, I had at the end, of course, or almost everyone in the development team had to deal with the customers face to face, or everyone got at least a bit in contact with the customer. And so we actually involved the customer quite early in that process. So here we are in the infinite space of testing, and that's the wonderful thing, about testing. We have so much possibilities which we can do. And it can be sometimes really overwhelming in all the things we could do. You know, when you're a tester, this is fantastic because you can when you're interested in security testing or performance testing or in which section, wherever, you know, you can really go in there and dig deeper in that and learn from that. That's the wonderful thing, because we have so many stars which we can visit in testing. That's wonderful. So imagine now we have a DevOps project. We have almost everything in place. So we have the technical practices, know-how of continuous delivery to do continuous integration and all this continuous stuff, deploying, releasing, and so on. And we might have, or which is kind of necessary, we have pipelines in place, which are actually our pumps. It's the heartbeat of our continuous delivery, continuous deployment process. And we might have monitoring, logging, alerting, and so on in our operations part. Now, when it comes to find a test strategy for our specific team or for our project, that might be, as I said before, a bit overwhelming because we can do so much things. So I thought a little bit about that, and I came up with 3 things, or just reduced it to 3 things. So there are 3 things we can do in such a state. The first one is, we do just nothing because nobody's interested in testing, nobody wants testing or whatever. And it might be that sometimes that's the smartest things we can do. I've never faced this in a project that nobody was interested in testing. So that might be something new in the future, but yeah, might be that someone of you has faced this challenge of doing nothing. Then the second thing is we can create our test strategy from our very own experiences and expertise, which we collected in the past, over the past in the project. And then the third one, I have to emphasize here on that, And here I make the link back to the beginning, you know, what I said at the beginning. Sometimes we have to dig a little bit into the past and see what's already out there, you know, and find some models, some of these beasts, and have to unleash them. We usually don't adapt them one-to-one. We just have to unleash these models so that they can inspire us in finding a way or finding the best things out of them, which we can reuse in our project. So I would say we go with option 3, because that's quite interesting, and have a look at some of these beasts of models which are already existing. That's not a complete or definite list of them, but just a couple of touch points which I would give you on your way here. So one of the first models, I wouldn't say first models, but that's the first slide here with this model is the Agile Fluency model. So the Agile Fluency model can give you an impression, just a little bit of feeling where your team or you as a team are currently positioned on your Agile pathway. So are you just building code, or are you even focusing, or are you aware of values? And then the next stage would be like, are you actually delivering value? And related to testing, that could mean, are you aware, is everyone aware, for example, in your team, of test-driven development and how important collaboration within the team is, so that everyone is actually involved in the team and is responsible for testing? And at the end, that focusing on delivering high quality is essential, especially when we are in such a great speed here. So with this model, we can gain an understanding how the testing mindset in a team looks like, and finding gaps to work on and where we might want to improve. Of course, this not only depends on your team, on yourself. It depends at the end also on the environment, the company which you're working in. So actually, how mature is your organization and so on. So where is your organization positioned? is your organization, the organization itself, is the organization also aware of shipping on marketing cadence, for example, and so on. So it's not only the team, but it can, which actually decides this model or influences where you are in this model. It's also like where the company itself, or the project within the company stands on. Then a next very important model is, of course, the branching strategy, how the branching strategy in your team looks like, because that is where your team is living. No, not your team, sorry. The code is living, sorry for that. Where your code is living, actually. So, and wherever our changes make your code, there are also certain risks which have to be addressed. So here, the branching, branching strategy, the classical GitFlow model, which you might know there, where you have a master branch where you usually create your or take your release off, which then goes to like an integration or pre-prod and production environment. Then we have a development branch, which is usually just for the team, like where the team is working on, which goes to a development or test environment. And then you have feature work, you work with feature branches where you just pull out your feature branches out of the development branch. Now, at a certain point of time, you want to merge your feature branches back into your development branch. And exactly there where we have the merge point, we have certain risks because you're merging code. And to some degree, you might want to tackle this risk here. Same with bug fixes and so on. Then the next one, a more straightforward one, which is more fitted for DevOps, is the GitHub flow model, where you have a master branch, just one branch, one main or one base branch, one main branch, and you would just work, everyone is working on that, and you just pull your feature branches out of your master branch. But also here at a certain point in time, you want to merge your feature branches back into the master branch. There are also a couple of points here where there are risks, because you're merging code, and you might want to address these risks. There is a third one, the one flow model, which I haven't a slide for because I've never worked with that. Just I've heard of that. The one flow model where you have the same, almost the same as here. You have a master branch, but everyone is working on the master branch, and instead of working with merge requests or then with merges, you work with rebase. That's then more straightforward, but actually I have never used that. I would would wonder how that actually feels like when a team is practicing or is using the one flow model. Then we all know that one, the agile testing quadrants. The agile testing quadrants can give us a broad overview of several test techniques, and that's where you can get inspired of. So when you see, okay, we need, almost everyone needs or wants to have unit tests, component integration tests, then you're focusing probably more on the automation part. You want to take something out of the automation part. If you say, okay, we absolutely need automated acceptance tests, a little bit exploration and so on, you are more like on the upper left here, automation in combination with hands-on. When you have a mission-critical app which says like usability is mission-critical, you are more in the right upper corner here, where you have the acceptance stage, user acceptance stage, acceptance testing, and hands-on testing. So it's this combination here. Or you say, okay, we have performance is mission-critical or security is mission-critical, then you go most probably more on the lower right here, where we have a combination of hands-on and automation. So this is still a very wonderful model here to get inspiration from what we actually might need in our project. Then the testing pyramid, we all know that one. There also, in the past or in the future, there will have been a lot of discussion about that. I don't want to go too deep in that. I just have to, from my point of view, there's just one point to consider. So what the pyramid actually says is that you should, I'm not sure, you should have more unit tests than UI tests. Now the point is here a little bit, you know, it might be that might be true for some context, but at the end, you know, the testing pyramid or the inspiration which you get out of the testing pyramid has to fit your context. So when you are developing an API or you deliver or you expose API endpoints, then you might have, just from the amount of perspective, and that's what I criticize about the pyramid. It's not the amount that counts, it's just the focus which actually counts. Maybe your integration tests or API tests are more important than unit tests. And then you have more of them, or as we will see later, you have an UI, which is as we did in our project. You develop a UI, and then you might have more UI tests. Just from the amount, you might have more UI tests than unit tests. You know, it really depends with what you are actually dealing with at the end. So to give you an example here on the right side is the mobile testing pyramid, and there you focus more on manual or hands-on testing with all these different devices which you have on the real device. That's still the most important aspect of mobile testing, that you at the end that you actually have the device in your hand and test on that, and might be less on the unit tests here. So this is an example here of applying testing pyramid to mobile testing. Then a very inspiring one is the model, DevOps model here, testing model from Katrina out of her book, which she mentioned. So she has kind of these blocks on top of each other, and then we have on the unit level, she says, like, we have fine mesh grid where you catch the caterpillars, and at the end, you know, on production, like testing on production, you have alerting on monitoring and logging in place, where you then actually catch finally those caterpillars which were grown up to butterflies. So this is also kind of a very inspiring model where you want to focus at the end. So now, I was a little bit too fast. Now, as we have to deal with pipelines and speeds, we want to also get rid of all these checking, all these silly things, you know, all these silly things a poor human being has to do all over again every hour or maybe 2 hours where our pipeline is running. So we want to have some automations on an automation mechanism which actually executes, which executes all these checks, all these silly checks. And for that, we have also two great models out there. So the first one, which I will shortly show to you, is a model which helps you to define or to find out on which level you should actually implement your automation. So you can ask yourself, on which level should I implement my automated checks? Then as the second model then is more what you should consider once you implement your automation. So the first one, as I mentioned, is this Tutu and Tata from Mark. So all credit goes to him. This is pretty cool. It's a really funny one, Tutu and Tata. The first one, Tutu, testing the UI or testing through the UI. You can ask yourself on a specific feature, do I really need to have a UI test for testing this feature, or might be an API test more fitted for that? Then the Tata is the same for the API layer. Tata, testing the API or testing through the API. So do I test a specific API endpoint, or do I test something which is actually called by the API itself and might be unit tests or whatever more fitted for that? So this is a great model in the shape or in the form of a mnemonic, which can help you in defining or find a way where on which layer we should implement our automation. Let me have a quick sip here on my water. Thank you. Good. Then the second one is sacred. This one is from Richard, so all credits go to Richard Bradshaw here. So as our automation is sacred, we should also treat it as sacred. And there are a couple of things we should, or it might be a good idea, which we could consider once we actually implement our automation. So the S stands for state. So every automation check we implement has to be in a certain state, and that most probably done with data. So from where do we get the data from? You know, where do we feed the data into the test? So do we do that in the test itself? So ad hoc, do we create the test data which we need on the fly as the test is executed, or do we populate the data top down from the pipeline, or do we use test data, or can the environment, you know, the stage, can the environment deliver us the data, for example, that we have certain templates on the test or integration environment which we can use. So state is a very central part. Without test data, nothing happens there. Then algorithm, that's what the A stands for, algorithm. Here we have to think, okay, what scenario do we call, what's the business know-how of our application which we put into this automated check here? So what do we actually do? What do we actually test for? Do we actually cover a positive flow? Do we also want to a certain degree, handle negative cases or whatever? So this is the business know-how which flows into our automation here. Then codified oracles, here we have to think about what do we put in our expectations, assertions at the end, from where do we get that? So what is true and what is false? Do we get that from the stories, from the acceptance criteria, or who defines that, what is wrong and what is okay, or what is the truth? So we have to deal with that. Then the R stands for reporting. So reporting is also a very central part, because it might be that we want to visualize our automation. It depends a little bit who is interested in that. So if the stakeholders are interested, or the project management, or whoever is interested in actually your team's automation or whatever, then you might build a lovely, nice dashboard. If only your team is interested in these automation reports, then it might be just in the console or whatever. It might be a good fit. So it really depends who is interested in the report or the results of the automation, who needs to be informed here. Then the E stands for execution. Here we have to think about where, when, how do we execute our automation, on which stage do we have different test sets, and so on and so forth. Then the last one, D, stands for deterministic. So as our automation in the pipeline these days runs continuously, so every half an hour or even less or whatever, we have to be able to trust our automation. So our automated checks have to be rocket solid. So how do we build that? How do we make it reusable, our automation, and so on and so forth? So this is kind of a really rough ramp up of the sacred model. There is a version on YouTube where Richard actually explains it much more deeply. It's like a 1-hour video, so on. Yeah, so this is just a short way of letting you know about that. So this is kind of a quick summary of a few models. So if you're looking for the heuristic strategy model from James Buck, so if you're looking for that, I didn't mention that, but every model which I mentioned here or before is kind of part of that. So these was kind of some insights, more deeper insights on different aspects of models here. So, but at the end of the day, you need to actually decide what you can use in your context. So it depends where you're working. It might be It might be the case that you say, okay, security is not important, performance is not important, or whatever. So a lot of that happens to build actually, or to come up with your own model. That needs a lot of discussion. It's not done in 2 minutes or whatever. So also in our team, it took quite a while to define a model which then is suited for everyone. So this is a kind of a process. So you can do that, as I said, as through talking, through having meetings, through experiences, through experiments and so on, or you can do that in a more playful way through gamification. So the next, I wouldn't say a model, but the next helpful way in finding your test strategy model then finally, or to have specific things what you want to do in your testing. You can use the risk storming, and all credit for that goes to Berner and Marcel here. So I've actually never used it. I just have seen it from far away, but I like kind of the approach, you know, to actually spark discussions in the team. So you have a game board here in the middle, and you place your system on the test in the middle, and then you kind of define quality aspect, what is really the 6 most important quality aspects, which are most important to your context here. Then you put on the outer circle, you put risks, what risk, or what's the risk, what might be threatening your quality aspects, till you finally at the end find patterns, techniques, heuristics, models, and ideas to actually come up with solution to tackle risks. So let's just give you a quick example here. So if you say, okay, for our system on the test, performance is really crucial, and there might be a risks because we're using third-party frameworks and we are not sure how they perform. So at the end, as a solution or as a technique to handle this, or kind to tackle this, performance testing might be a solution. Another example on this is, for example, user experience. So when you say, oh yeah, user experience is really crucial for our application, you know, because we could lose customers. That's the risk. Risk is we could lose our customers if our usability is, or our user experience is crappy. So you might set up some usability testing session, or with the end user to tackle these. So this game is actually really, or could be a really good way of sparking discussions in your team, and finally find your final test strategy, how you want to approach testing in your project. So as I said, I've never used it. I've just seen for far away, but it looks like very promising, and I'm hoping to actually play this game in the near future once. Good. Now, I would like to show you the model which we came up in our team then finally. And as I said, this was not done in several minutes, so this was kind of a long process till it actually worked then, but it worked quite nicely at the end. So the first thing which we had, or which we can call testing, was planning. So that might be a little bit weird, but that's what I said at the beginning, you know, shift testing left. So every single developer, every single person in our team had the chance to criticize, to challenge the ideas, the user stories mainly, which were brought in by the PO in our team on the planning meeting. So that was kind of the first touch point here with testing, with the ideas, with the PO, where the PO came up with his ideas. So everyone was kind of not for, I wouldn't say forced, but engaged, or could happily here contribute with asking questions here. So that was the first stage of our testing in our team. And then, of course, unit testing, as hopefully the rest of the world is doing. So there is nothing new about that. There are no new insights on that. That's pure automation since ages. And then, as we developed the web front end, of this enterprise system, we needed somehow to test our JavaScript implementation against browser storm. And we also needed to tackle the problem about fast feedback. So how do you do that when you have a backend? So what we had to deal with was a backend which was kind of slow, but that was the nature of the backend itself, because the backend created actually VMs underneath, and to create a VM that takes several minutes. So, and we wanted to be independent. So what we did is we implemented UI integration tests and mocked we basically mocked the API backend. So through that, we could actually have a fast feedback loop and integrate that in our pipeline. So this was pretty cool here. Then, and still, I believe one of the most important part, the hands-on testing, to experiment, to explore, to challenge the application. So everyone was involved in that. So there weren't any specific test session where we said, okay, let's test. As I said at the beginning, let's test this next Friday. So it was basically a continuous communication going on. Oh, you are finished with that feature. Yeah, okay, then pipeline, we will deploy kind of to the dev environment soon. Then you can test it. This was kind of an ongoing and continuously ongoing process, this hands-on testing here. But still, one of the main most important things in our team at the time. And then we also wanted to bring some shiny pieces of our UI integration mock tests to actually speak it fully out here. We also wanted to bring some of these magic things to the UI end-to-end test, which means actually to have some automation with the real backend in place, which of course then had longer running times then. So when you see this model here, you might think, okay, this doesn't look too promising or too exciting, but where is actually the magic now here? And the magic comes right at this point here. So we said unit tests and UI integration tests are part of every feature and also influence our estimation of a feature. So we basically sit during the planning meeting, we said, okay, we also integrate unit tests and UI integration then test. Do we have a special considerations to make here when we look at UI integration tests? Does that take a little bit? Do we want to actually implement UI integration test for this feature or not? Does it take more time or whatever? And then also the maintenance factor was here, like, okay, if we had a feature which actually touched an already existing UI integration test, we said, okay, but then we have to adapt this one, and that every time we did that, that also was part of the estimation. And the second good thing was, despite it was part of the definition of done, and of course of the production code, it was written in the same language with the same rules. So a developer might not use a third-party tool or another tool outside of his development ecosystem. So this was a kind of a really good idea to couple these tightly together, so that this was everything was part of a feature here, and then we didn't have to use a third-party tool for that. Wonderful. Now, how did we put this model into our pipeline? So the first pipeline which we had in place in our team was the merge request pipeline. So whenever a developer created from his feature branch a merge request, the merge request was validated. So what does that mean? So in this validation job here, that's the green box here, all the unit tests and the UI mock tests were executed on that particular merge request. If green, the merge request was kind of accepted to go into a code review, in a peer review. If red, the developer had, of course, to adapt it, or of course also to make the test more stable or whatever was needed. And the reporting for that in our pipeline, which we had in place, was kind of, as I said before, reporting has to match the listener finally, or the person who is interested. And the unit tests and UI integration tests were only like interesting for us as a team, and so we did kind of a basic reporting, and that's the reporting of the unit test, and this one here for the UI tests. So with that, we reached kind of the goal that we left no branch unchecked. So every branch was finally checked by our integration and UI integration tests. Then the pre-release pipe to development environment. So the development environment was that environment where we did the hands-on testing on. So whenever a code review was okay, then it might have happened that there were some changes done to this feature branch or to this feature branch, and then the feature branch was merged into the development branch. And as soon a new feature branch was merged in the development branch, with the pre-release here, this green box again green, this green box in the unit and the UI integration tests were executed on that development branch. And if okay, it was the release, or the pre-release. The pre-release was deployed to development environment. If not, if red, yeah, rework had to be done. Then finally, we had to release something from the master branch. So that was our release pipe to integration environment. So nightly, what we did is we took again the development branch, executed the unit and the UI integration tests on that. And if green, we deployed the master branch to the integration environment, where we then integrated with the other systems, so with the API backend and so on, where we then actually first we executed like as the UI end-to-end test with the real backend in place, and this was the purpose of that, was to have a like kind of a decent sanity check, just to verify if we should go deeper in hands-on testing or not, or should we just leave it be because the basic functionality wasn't working. So this was the mechanism there which we used. And then we had, of course, also, and if red, also if this pipeline was red, then in the morning we had to check, yeah. But that was also kind of a manual act, or a human interaction here, which was needed to check what happens that the pipeline failed. And of course, we also had different other stages in place, like an AAT, where we ran the full set, for example, where we ran the full set of automated tests. And we had factory acceptance test stage, where it was kind of a pre-production environment. And then we had the production environment. But this was the nature of the context we were in this enterprise system. We never deployed directly to production from the pipeline, so that at the end there was always like a human being or more human beings involved in that process on the factory acceptance stage to actually verify or to do like kind of an acceptance test there if we should go further on production or not. So this really depends how deep you, or how you automate the whole process here. It really depends on the context which you're in, and finally what your application looks like. What's the purpose of your application? So there is actually no right or wrong. It's just doing it in a different way here. So we nearly reached the end of the 42 minutes. Yeah, I want to finally share some learnings. And what often happens is when you, as long as you are working in a project team or in a team, there are things which you actually don't see because you're biased, you are blind, or whatever. And then as soon as you were leaving the team, and that actually happened to me, and you suddenly realize that, oh yeah, we could have done that. Oh no, why didn't we do that and not the other way? So there are a couple of them which I would like to share. Some are more obvious, some are not. So yeah. So the first one is start early to think about how you want to tackle end-to-end testing. So I mean, with the overall end-to-end testing, when you have different teams which actually work on one product. So how do you want to tackle this? Do you need a separate test team which tests on a specific environment and final, or how do you want to tackle this? So yeah, we had kind of quite a while to find that out, or to find for our project the best way, or one of the possible best ways. Then consumer-driven contract testing. So as I mentioned before, what we did in our team, we mocked the API backend, but we actually never shared that like with a packed file, like you do with in a consumer-driven contract testing way, where you have a packed file where you run this packed file against the API backend. So we never did that, which sounds quite obvious, but yeah, would have taken quite an effort to do that, but I think that might have been worth it to do. Then a third one is, freedom to change and adapt models in your team. So whenever you come up with your test strategy, that doesn't mean that this has to be for the next 15 years or for the next year. So feel free to actually change and adopt models. And here I can give an example on this one. So what we used in our team was the GitFlow model, where we have this master branch and developer branch, and we could have used it, or we could have used the GitFlow model, where we just work on the master branch. That would have been a little bit more straightforward, and we might have get rid of some environments or test environments finally. So yeah. So now take the freedom and chance, and remind yourself to adapt models in your team which you're using. Yeah, consider automation visual testing. So our UI tests were heavily or solely focused on the functional part, the functional aspects. And it would have been great, as soon as you were to a certain degree kind of have a stable UI, it would have been great to have for the most important UIs some kind of an automated visual testing, so that you don't have to do that all the time, all over again, on hands-on or with your human eyes. So that would have been quite nice to have something like this in place. Then emphasize BDD. So we did our automation based on the user stories, but BDD would have engaged us more, to have a shared understanding from the beginning on, and then finally also have a living documentation, because we didn't have that living. The living documentation was kind of in the test itself, but it would have been nice to have a human readable living documentation on that. So yeah, BDD would have been great to have that. Then cross-browser testing. It's kind of got quite difficult these days, or it's quite. We have a broad landscape on different browsers and so on, and here you have to be aware what you actually need. It doesn't make sense when your customer specific web application doesn't require Safari or whatever, and just uses IE 11, Chrome, and Firefox. Then you have to figure out what is the targeting browser. So we kind of ran our UI automation just on Chrome, because it was so sexy and fast, and we also considered running then in IE. But yeah, as you know, that's kind of hard, or at that point it was kind of hard, and we just set that aside. So yeah, that's then what often happens when you set things aside. Yeah, wonderful. So if you have any feedback, any comments, any experiences yourself in such or a similar environment, feel free to reach out to me. As I said at the beginning, if you want to do this in a public way, you can ping me on Twitter. If you want to go more private, you can write me an email. If you want to get a little bit more private, you can ask for, you can contact me on Skype, but you only get my Skype ID if you write me a mail. Okay, that's it. Thank you for joining me. I hope to get you that could give you some ideas on your way out of this webinar, and hope to see you one and the other on future conferences. Thank you.
Thank you. Just 1 second now, and I'll set up for the rest of the webinar. So yes, we do have a lot of questions actually for you, Simon, so I will get into them momentarily. You still have time to ask Simon your questions. The chat box is open there, and I will ask Simon the questions. So just a reminder, we still have 2 more webinars coming up this month and next month. We also have just announced a webinar. We will have our conference chair, Rickard, explain the program. So a very exciting webinar for us that can be registered for over on our Huddle site. Our program is out. Don't forget to look at it over on the EuroSTAR software conference page. And without further ado, I'll get to the questions. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was great, and we had some great feedback. So I will just open up my questions box here.
Thank you.
So the first is more of a comment. Opening slide is by far the best DevOps endless loop I've ever seen. What great graphics.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Thank you so much. And I didn't, no one ever gave me this feedback. That's lovely. Now I'm really happy. I'm really, really happy. Thank you so much for that.
Good.
Whoever that is, you can make a comment on Twitter or write me an email. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So how does API test strategy change when working in microservices architecture?
Oh, that's a question. I'm really sorry about that, but I haven't to deal with that in the past so far. So I can't give you an honest answer on that. So I actually had never to deal with that so far to give you a really deep answer. I really have to read on that. But sorry for that. Yeah.
Can you expand the question about the pyramid for test mobile applications and best practices for mobile testing according to your presentation?
This was Can I switch back here?
Do you want me to switch back? Yeah, absolutely. 1 second now, and I'll give you.
Yeah.
You should have the notification there again, Simon. If you want to go back to that slide, yeah.
Oh yeah. Show me quickly here. Huh? Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect. Go for it. Yeah.
So this was this one here exactly. Yes. So I just thought that this would be kind of awesome. I'm not an expert in mobile automation or in mobile testing, but what I also tested a couple of apps so far, and this is just an example which I took. If you want to read a little bit more on that, you can find this image and the blog post about that on the ministryoftesting.com website. So for that one who has asked this question, if you want to have a more deeper insight in particular what every of these test stages on this pyramid actually means. I just have what I've done. I mean, this is a couple like 8 years ago, which I was involved in a mobile testing project, and what we did there at this time was mainly manual testing on real devices. And as I said, if we want to get deeper, if you want to have a read deeper on that, you can do that. Just Google Ministry of Testing, mobile testing pyramid, and there you should find something. Yeah, okay. I hope I can serve you with that.
Great. Sure, we can stick to the setup we have at the moment. I'll continue on with questions. What API testing strategy change depending on type of architecture?
That's a similar question as before. Yeah, that's the same. So I can't give you any. deeper.
No problem. No problem. Okay.
I would have to Google that for you.
Okay. When you say end-to-end testing, do you mean overall end-to-end functional testing or API end-to-end testing?
I mentioned this here. And okay, and UI end-to-end test. I mean, yeah, the overall testing with all the systems involved, so with all the real backends in place. So without UI end-to-end tests is, from my perspective, just in this context, means with all the with all the real systems with the real data in place. That's what I mean here. So no mocking and nothing here.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you please give me some information on consumer-driven contract testing?
Oh, that could fill up a whole talk. Yeah, so basically this what I mentioned here, consumer-driven contract testing. So what you basically do here is, so you, as we did, you mock the API backend to get on speed and to develop independently from an API backend. So that's the purpose of it, so that you are independent in the sense of that you can go on with feature development and also have a fast feedback loop if you're executing tests. But what you can do then is, and you have to Google for, there's a Pact. I think this tool is called Pact, you know. We actually didn't use that tool, but there, I think it's called Pact, this consumer-driven contracting tool. And what we basically do there is you write your contract, your mock contract in a JSON file, and then you share that with the API backend, and you run the API backend against this JSON file, and then you can see actually, then you can share this file, and whenever something is changing on the API backend, which is really crucial for an UI, for example, then you get to know that in this contract file. So you can update this contract file and synchronize that with your mock data. So that's basically really roughly how it works.
Okay. Yeah. What issues will my team face if we are moving from traditional delivery every few months to continuous delivery?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please, again?
Absolutely. What issues will my team face if we are moving from traditional delivery every few months to continuous delivery?
That's a very broad question.
Yeah.
Because it starts kind of at the beginning, you know, somewhere here, you know, with this slide, you know, that's what I say. That's because that's what this model is for. You know, are you where in the team, or where in this model are you actually living? Are you just building code, or are you focusing on value, delivering value? So it really, there are many of issues.
Yeah. Okay.
To get. So yeah, you basically you start at the beginning and then you just work your through. So there are a lot of issues which you could face. But I think a good way is to start is to make your team aware of that, or to start from the team and not just go directly into tools and frameworks and so on. So it's like a mindset. You just need to kind of build up this mindset, you know.
Okay. Do we need a whole team of people with DevOps skills for continuous delivery?
That's a good question. So what we did, so basically what you saw here, or what I told you about pipelines here. So where we have it here, let's have a nice pipeline like this one here. So yeah, so what we had in our project was a team which was dedicated as a, I would say that like operations team or DevOps team, or I wouldn't say DevOps team, but because everyone is definitely part of DevOps. It was an operations team which took care of all this pipeline stuff on the environment stuff. So yeah, what I guess what you need as soon as you get on a little bit larger, you need a team which handles all this environment and pipeline stuff. So that's what we had in place. So we had a kind of a team of 4 people which did nothing else than just building the environment, caring about the test data, caring about the pipelines that they work, to building the pipelines, because there are tons of batch files behind the scenes. So yeah, that's, you actually, as soon as you get growing, you need someone who is daily taking care of, of that.
Okay. This is a question about branching strategy GitFlow. What if destroying history isn't an option?
That's a good question. If
What if
Destroying.
destroying history isn't enough?
Yeah, the history. As I know, I'm not quite sure, but you destroying, yeah, that's the kind of a disadvantage when you would work with the one flow model with the rebasing, Git rebasing. That, as far as I know, that will destroy your Git's history. Yeah, so you would have to work with something like this here with the Git model. But yeah, I'm not an absolutely pro on this, but that's what I just know of it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Simon, last question. What are your favorite automation tools?
Your favorite automation tools? Oh, that's heavily dependent on the context or the application which you're working on. So, I mean, Selenium is great. What we use, I mean, it's just what we use in our context was Protractor, so that's kind of the wrapper among Selenium, so which is best fit for Angular application. But it really it really depends on the technology which you use, and that's the point. To just go back to the point to our model here, that's what I'm believing in. Just don't want to offend any third-party tool vendor. What I offend, your tool has to be nicely integratable in your environment, into development. As long if developers are also part of implementing automation checks, because most probably no developer will use a third or several or in worst case several other third-party tools. So if a developer can use his own or her own language to create automation, that's a perfect match. But yeah, this depends on the technology which you use.
Great. Simon, thank you so much for your time today. And like you have said, anyone can reach out to you in those various methods, and you're available on Twitter. Perfect. Yeah, great. You're on Twitter there as Alien Tester, and a recording of this webinar will be available on the Huddle site in about an hour's time. So anyone can go back there and find those details again, and Simon is open to answering your questions. So thank you so much, Simon, for a great presentation, and I'm so glad you could make it today and present this to us. So thank you again.
Thank you, well, thank you for having me. Well, it was lovely, a wonderful day, and yeah, see you another time. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Bye.
Bye.